So here we are, finally, with the notorious, the one and only, Bill Weinberg of Countervortex. How are you, Bill?
Alive.
Okay, well, good. Bill is an award-winning journalist. He is the editor-in-chief and producer of the Countervortex podcast series, and he writes articles, and we're going to try to get him from articles and podcasts back in the groove, up on YouTube, so we can put a face to the voice with these great concepts, all he has to teach based on years, decades of experience with the American left, the progressive movement. He has encyclopedic knowledge. Right now, everybody's debating Chomsky and Richard Falk and this gray zone crowd and all these characters that are supporting Putin one way or another. We call these people Tankies. But a lot of people are wondering, why do we call them Tankies? What does it mean to call, what is a Tankie? So I'm going to ask Bill if you could open it up and tell us, what is a Tankie?
Okay, well, the fact that we're actually including Chomsky in the category of Tankie is itself a testament to how the whole intellectual atmosphere has radically deteriorated in recent years. The origins of the term Tankie actually go back to a sectarian split in the Trotskyist left in the United States back in 1956, when the Soviet Union invaded Hungary. The most significant Trotskyist faction in the United States was the SWP, the Socialist Workers Party, itself an offshoot from the Communist Party. They're the ones who lined up with Trotsky as opposed to Stalin. But in 1956, the Soviet Union invades Hungary, and the SWP itself split. And there was a faction around a guy by the name of Sam Marcy, who supported the Soviet invasion of Hungary against a so-called counter-revolutionary rebellion. The SWP, to their credit, actually opposed the Soviet invasion of Hungary. So at that time, the Sam Marcy group split from the SWP and formed the Workers' World Party, WWP, which started moving back in a more Stalinist direction. If you ask them, they probably would have said that they were still Trotskyist and that they had certain criticisms of the Soviet Union, but in reality, they were sort of moving back in a kind of a retro Stalinist direction, and they unfortunately remain hegemonic today. Their political line has become more and more hegemonic on the American left in recent years. I mean, I would have thought that after the Cold War, people would have rethought all of the errors of that period and started to move in a more progressive direction. And there were certain elements of the left that did, in fact, do that. But certainly for the past 10 years, since the Syrian revolution began, I really see that as a turning point. There's been very, very big backsliding. And now—
Okay, so let's slow down a second. So by hegemonic, of course, you mean predominant influence on the left.
Well, yes, I'm getting to that. I'm going to explain all, okay?
Okay,
so
let's do it your way, but I just want to point out 2003, the prominent organizations that arose at that time were probably doing a good thing, many of them, such as Code Pink, but they've pretty much gone downhill, and now they're no longer.
You're getting way ahead of us, okay? You're getting way ahead of us, all right? First, let's go back to 1991 and Operation Desert Storm, when The Workers' World launched as their new front group, the International Action Center.
Right.
Okay, they've always kind of like had a front group through which they kind of draw in the neophytes and the uninitiated with rhetoric that superficially sounds good, but kind of downplays their sinister politics. Like during the Vietnam War, their big front group was Youth Against War and Fascism. So with Desert Storm, they launch a new front group, the International Action Center, and they actually take as their front man former Attorney General Ramsey Clark, of all people, interestingly enough. So he was very kind of a high-profile figure, and they started to accrue some attention. There was actually a split in the anti-war movement at that time, the movement which began mobilizing against the impending U.S. invasion of, or the U.S. attack on the Sadaam Hussein regime. It actually was an invasion, not as much of an invasion as what would happen in 2003, but they did actually get as far as Basra, or just outside of Basra. So in 1991, during Operation Desert Storm. In any event, the International Action Center and Workers' World refused to countenance any criticism of Saddam Hussein, refused to criticize his invasion of Kuwait, his invasion and occupation of Kuwait. So the other significant anti-war groups, the War Resisters League, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, etc., formed an alternative coalition, and they actually had rival anti-war marches on Washington in this would have been early 1991, I believe, like a week or two apart. Really ridiculous. So then their politics get worse over the course of the 1990s. They were taking a completely pro-Serb position during the Yugoslavia wars, Bosnia, Kosovo, etc., which followed in the 1990s. Ramsey Clark actually went to, just like he went to Iraq to meet with Saddam Hussein, he went to Bosnia to meet with Radovan Karadzic, the leader of the Bosnian Serbs, who was at that time committing genocide. And they were just taking a complete genocide denialist position. And then 9/11 happens. And with 9/11, a new anti-war group emerges, which is ANSWER, variously known as International Answer or the Answer Coalition, for Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. I think that it should be called Act Now to Support War and Enable Racism, or Encourage Racism. But their politics were not initially all of that blatantly bad, but it soon became clear that the group at the core of ANSWER was International Action Center, and International Action Center was a front for the Workers' World Party. Okay, so their politics became more problematic again with the the big invasion of Iraq, the W. Bush invasion of Iraq in 2003. Again, that same split kind of re-emerged, and you had another, the more mainstream, I guess, anti-war organizations formed a group called United for Peace and Justice as kind of an alternative to International Answer. And again, they kind of had this rivalry between them, and sometimes they cooperated and sometimes they didn't, and they had fallings out. I was taking a position of complete non-cooperation with ANSWER.
Okay, Bill, I have a question for you here, though. The United for Peace and Justice, was that also this term used front group? I think is probably
no, it was not. No, it was not. It was a genuine coalition. I mean, there were elements on board who were
affiliated with the different
affiliated with the old CP, with the Communist Party. and so on, but they were not a front group. They were a genuine coalition.
Okay, so UF, United for Peace and Justice, was a bona fide coalition. It had socialists, it had social democrats, liberals, maybe some capitalists that were against war, libertarians who were against war, mixed in communists.
Not so much capitalists and libertarians, but in any event, I mean, it was the standard, anti-war organizations like the ones I just mentioned, War Resisters League, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Fellowship of Reconciliation, etc. Right?
Legitimate groups.
What's that?
Legitimate groups.
Yes, legitimate groups. I mean, I don't see eye to eye with them on everything, but legitimate groups, yes. The main thing I don't see eye to eye with them on is, their willingness to cooperate with Workers' World and its front groups. So like IAC and Answer. In any event, it became, especially clear with the outbreak of the Syrian Revolution in 2011 that Answer and Workers' World were just, intransigently in the corner of the Bashar Assad dictatorship. And unfortunately, they continue to, exist, at least in name. I mean, Answer is actually, in their bogus, quote unquote, anti-war rallies, they've actually marched with portraits of Bashar Assad.
Disgusting.
Yes, I mean, it just boggles the mind. But they've continued to exist. Well, United for Peace and Justice, after the Iraq War went into abeyance, so did United for Peace and Justice. I mean, they're completely moribund. I think they probably exist just in name at this point. Maybe they still have a website. Whereas Answer continues to exist. What did happen, though, is that the Workers' World Party itself split, going back maybe 10 or 15 years ago, not sure of the date. They split into an East Coast and a West Coast faction. It was kind of like, Tupac and Notorious Big. There wasn't much content to it, not much political content to it at all. It was just basically a turf battle. They have the same sinister politics. But the West Coast faction became the PSL, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, an Orwellianly named organization. I think that it should be the Party for Fascism and Dictatorship, if it was any truth in advertising here.
We have 3 minutes. 3 minutes, Bill. 3 minutes.
Getting there. Okay. So in the divorce settlement between them, Workers' World and the PSL, the PSL got Answer in the divorce settlement. So Answer is now technically a PSL front, whereas International Action Center, which used to be the core of Answer, remains in the Workers' World orbit. And because their politics are basically identical, they've recently formed a new group. They've gotten back together and formed a new group called UNAC, United National Anti-War Coalition, to try to bring the two factions together again. And they continue to have completely sinister politics, become extremely evidences for Ukraine invasion. No criticism of Russia whatsoever. And what is really alarming is that, now it's no longer here. I've taken all this time, dissecting these, sectarian left factions, but this is no longer a phenomenon of the sectarian left, okay? Because now this poison has spit itself throughout the left, and you were hearing the same damn thing, the soft cell variety of a little bit. I mean, Noam Chomsky is not, impolitic enough to actually literally, raise the portrait of Bashar Assad. But he's giving us the same line that the gas attacks in Syria were not really carried out by Bashar Assad. It was really all the rebels gassing themselves as a provocation. He's now preaching that for the good of world peace, Ukraine has got to capitulate to being
1 minute.
Ukraine has got to capitulate to being dismembered and to having its being essentially extinguished as a sovereign entity. So all of these years, people have been telling me that, I'm just wasting my time fighting these little sectarian factions, quote unquote, even though they were the leadership of the actually existing anti-war movement. But, I feel more and more vindicated in having waged this fight, because now, the Tankie position has become the hegemonic position on the American left. And it's
okay, to be continued. This is a good foundation. And obviously, this is the first installment. So to be continued. This was Bill. We have to go to a hard break. This can be our first segment, and we will fill in the blanks at our subsequent broadcast.
You got it.
Good night, Bill.
Good night.